$300 for the fat widow? You're overcharging. She'll eat more than she works." Laughter rolled through the main street of Silver Falls like dirty water. Men in sweat-stained shirts and women with tight mouths crowded around the auction block, usually reserved for cattle and broken mining equipment. Today, a woman stood there instead. 31-year-old Clara Brennan, hands bound in front of her, cheeks burning hotter than the September sun. The auctioneer's voice droned, slick and careless. "By order of Judge Morrison, the debts of the late Henry Brennan must be satisfied. As his legal heir, Mrs. Brennan is responsible. Lacking funds, she will be indentured for a term of 2 years to whomever pays the full sum of $300. $300. More than Henry had ever put into their home. More than Clara could imagine seeing at once. She kept her gaze fixed on the far hills. Looking at the crowd meant seeing their faces, seeing curiosity turn to disgust, pity twist into contempt. At 340 pounds, she was the largest woman in town, and folks never let her forget it. They'd whispered when Henry married her, smirked when he drank, stared openly when he shouted at her in the street. Now they didn't bother to whisper. "Reckon whoever buys her will need to reinforce the floorboards," someone called. "Ask if the debt includes feeding her. That's another 300 at least." The crowd roared. Shame clawed up Clara's throat, but she forced it down. She would not cry. She had stood beside Henry's bed while he coughed himself to death after gambling their money away. She had buried him herself under a crooked pine. She knew what it was to endure. $50 to start, the auctioneer called. Strong woman, good cook, used to hard work. 50, shouted the tavern owner, whose servants walked like beaten dogs. 75, yelled a rancher whose reputation made Clara's stomach twist. 2 years, she thought. 2 years of being less than a person. 2 years of being reminded, with every order and every shove, that her life was worth exactly whatever price they paid today. 100, another man tried, more out of spite than need. A voice cut through the noise like thunder. $300. The street went still. Clara's head jerked toward the sound. A giant of a man stood at the edge of the crowd, taller than any she'd seen, shoulders broad enough to block the sun. Buckskin coat, dark hair brushing his shoulders, beard framing a hard, weathered face, eyes the color of a storm about to break. 300? The auctioneer sputtered. Sir, that's the full amount. I know what it is, the stranger said. I'll pay every cent. Her debt's cleared. She's mine for the term. Mine. The word struck Clara with equal parts terror and strange, aching relief. Before we go on, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from right now? And be honest with yourself. Would you have spoken up for a woman like Clara? Or would you have stood in that crowd and watched in silence? The crowd parted as the mountain man approached the platform, though he hadn't asked them to. Something in the way he moved, steady, unhurried, utterly certain, made people step aside on instinct. Clara Brennan wasn't a small woman, but next to him she felt almost fragile. He climbed onto the wooden platform with effortless grace for a man of his size and held out one large, calloused hand. "Come on," he said. "We're leaving." Clara stared at him, her pulse hammering. "Sir, why? Why would you pay so much for me?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he cast a hard, sweeping look over the crowd, the kind of look that made grown men lower their eyes. Then he spoke, his voice a deep rumble. Because no one deserves to be sold like livestock, and because I've got need of a wife, not a servant." Gasps rippled through the bystanders. Clara stumbled. "A wife?" "Name's Finn Bridger," he said. "We'll talk more on the trail." Behind them, the auctioneer nearly swallowed his tongue. "Sir, you do realize the terms—" "I said what I said," Finn replied. "Her debt's paid. It's done." Argument sprang up too late. Money was already exchanged, paperwork signed. Finn helped Clara down from the block as if she weighed nothing at all. No wince, no grunt, no hesitation. Just steady strength. The crowd watched, stunned and buzzing, as Finn led Clara toward a massive draft horse hitched outside the general store. The animal snorted, pawing the dirt, its saddle broad and reinforced, built for hauling weight, not speed. When Finn lifted Clara into the saddle, she almost froze from the shock of how gently his hand steadied her. Once mounted behind her, reins in hand, he clicked to the horse and steered them out of Silver Falls. Only when the town shrank behind them did Clara find her voice again. "You said you need a wife," she murmured, gripping the saddle horn. "But you don't know me. You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," Finn replied simply. Silence hung for several long heartbeats, broken only by the steady clop of hooves along the mountain trail. Then Finn continued, "Your husband died, left you alone and broke." Clara stiffened. "How do you know that?" "Small towns talk," he said. "I heard things on my last supply run." "Things?" she repeated, dread coiling in her belly. "That he gambled your money away, that he drank more than a man should, that he blamed you for everything that went wrong, including the things that were never your fault." Clara swallowed, humiliation rising. People talk too much. "Maybe," Finn said. "But I watched you today. You stood there with your chin up while the whole town tried to tear you down. That told me what I needed to know." Clara didn't know what shocked her more, that he'd noticed, or that he seemed to respect her for it. Still, fear gnawed at her. "Finn, I need you to understand something before this goes any further." He glanced down at her profile, his expression unreadable. "Go on." "I can't give you children," she whispered. "Henry and I tried for 7 years. The doctor said I was barren. If you bought me thinking I could become a mother, you're going to be disappointed." Finn didn't slow the horse or shy away. He just grunted quietly, as though she'd told him the weather might turn. "That right so?" he said. "A doctor told you that?" "Yes." "A doctor who ever took one look at your husband?" Clara blinked. "What do you mean?" Finn's jaw tightened. "A man who's drunk half the time can't plant a seed in a flower pot, let alone a woman." Her breath caught. No one had ever dared say such a thing aloud. Henry always said it was me," she whispered. "Henry was a damn fool," Finn said, "and fools like blaming anyone but themselves. But if I really can't, then we'll live without kids, and I'll still be glad I bought your debt today." Clara turned in the saddle, stunned. "You would still want me?" Finn's answer came without hesitation. "I didn't buy you for your ability to bear children. I bought your freedom from that town. And I want a partner, someone steady, loyal, strong in spirit. Kids or no kids, that's not a deal-breaker." Something hot prickled behind Clara's eyes. The mountain trail narrowed, forcing them closer. Finn's large hands held the reins loosely, confidently, as if guiding her wasn't a burden, but something he'd already accepted without question. "Clara," he said quietly, "your last life didn't treat you fair. Let this one do better by you." Her throat tightened. She wasn't sure yet whether Finn Bridger was salvation or another storm, but for the first time in years, she dared to feel something close to hope. The trail climbed steadily into the Idaho mountains, weaving through pine forests that smelled of sap and cold stone. The air grew thinner, sharper, carrying the promise of winter, though September had barely begun. Clara clung to the saddle horn, her heart pounding with each step of Finn's massive draft horse. "Lean with the climb," Finn murmured behind her. His voice was low, quiet enough that she felt it more in her spine than her ears. "Keeps your balance steady." Clara adjusted her weight, surprised when it helped. "I've never ridden this far, certainly not into mountains." "You're doing fine," Finn said. "Better than most." She doubted that, but something in his tone, simple, factual, without flattery, made warmth flicker in her chest. They rode in silence for a time, the forest swallowing the sounds of Silver Falls behind them. With every clop of hooves, Clara felt the distance from her old life widen. Shame loosened its grip. Her lungs expanded more fully. After nearly an hour, she ventured a question. "Why? Why do you live all the way out here?" Finn didn't answer immediately. The horse stepped over a fallen log. The air grew crisper. "Noise," he said finally. "Noise? Town noise, people noise, their opinions, their expectations, noise that never ends." He shifted slightly in the saddle. "I came up here 15 years ago to get away from all that. Built my cabin with my own hands, grew crops, trapped furs, learned what it means to survive without anyone telling you who you're supposed to be." Clara stared ahead, absorbing every word. "That sounds lonely?" "It can be." Finn let out a slow breath. "But not as lonely as living among people who don't see you." Clara's throat tightened. She knew that feeling far too well. Henry's voice echoed from memory. "You're lucky I married you. No one else would want something like you." She shivered. Finn noticed. "Cold?" "No, just remembering." "Don't bother," he said simply. "Remembering don't change nothing. Better to look ahead." The bluntness should have stung, but instead it grounded her, made her want to try. They rode for another hour before Finn slowed the horse to a halt at a wide clearing overlooking the valley. He hopped down and extended his arms up toward her. "I'll help you down." Clara hesitated. She wasn't light, and she was painfully aware of it. "I don't want to hurt you," she murmured. Finn snorted. "Clara, I fell a bull elk this spring that weighed more than you. Come here." Before she could protest, he placed his hands around her waist, large, warm, steady, and lifted her gently to the ground. Her boots touched earth, and he didn't let go until she found her balance. "You all right?" he asked. "Yes," she said softly. Her pulse raced for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Finn tied the horse to a pine and pulled out a canteen. "Drink. Then we'll walk the rest of the way. Trail gets narrow." Clara sipped the cold water. "How much farther?" "About a mile. Slow climb. You can manage it." "You sound very sure." "That's because I am." There it was again, that certainty. Not the belittling kind Henry had wielded, but the kind that felt like a hand resting between her shoulder blades, guiding her forward. The walk was slow but steady. Finn matched her pace without rushing, adjusting to her breath, her steps, her pauses. Not once did he sigh or show impatience. Halfway up, Clara stumbled on a loose stone. Finn's hand shot out, catching her elbow. "I've got you." The words, simple as they were, unraveled something tightly knotted inside her. Not since her mother's death had anyone said those words with such sincerity. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once, releasing her only when she was steady again. As they climbed, Clara noticed more of the landscape, wild herbs growing in patches, animal tracks in the dirt, shafts of sunlight breaking through the trees. Up here, the world felt clean, unjudging. She inhaled deeply, letting her lungs fill with air that tasted like pine and new beginnings. Eventually, the trees thinned, revealing a small plateau, and there, nestled against the mountainside, stood Finn's cabin. It was larger than she'd expected, solid logs interlocked with expert precision. Smoke curled from the chimney, a barn, a smokehouse, and a fenced garden spread out nearby. Everything spoke of care, strength, permanence. Clara's breath caught. "You built all this?" "Every piece." Finn looked at her, something softer in his storm-gray eyes. "A man works harder when he's building for a future he hopes he'll have." She wondered what future he'd imagined. A wife? A family? Someone who would share this quiet world with him? A pang of guilt struck her. "Finn, you should know. Even if I can't give you children, I want to be useful here. I can cook, mend, grow gardens, keep a home." "Clara," Finn interrupted gently, "I didn't bring you here to tally your worth." She blinked, confused. "Then what did you bring me for?" Finn stepped closer, towering but not intimidating, just present, intensely present. "I brought you here because I saw a woman with more strength than she gives herself credit for. A woman shamed by others' failings, not her own. A woman who deserves a place where she's not mocked or belittled. A woman I want to know, truly." Her heart slammed once hard. "And maybe," he added quietly, "a woman who could someday choose to care for me as much as I already care for her." Clara couldn't speak. The wind rustled pine needles overhead, carrying his words into the thin mountain air as though fixing them permanently into the world. He nodded toward the cabin. "Come inside. Let's start fresh." And for the first time in years, Clara felt like stepping forward didn't lead deeper into shame, but toward something warm, solid, and beautifully unknown. The first thing Clara noticed inside Finn Bridger's cabin was the warmth, not just the heat from the stone fireplace, but a deeper warmth woven into the very walls. Everything was handmade, lived in, but cared for. Shelves filled with books, a rocking chair smoothed by years of use, a braided rug beside the hearth, bundles of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. It felt safe, a feeling she hadn't known in a very long time. Finn set down her small bundle of belongings and stepped back, giving her room. "This is your home now, at least for the next 2 years. Maybe longer, if you choose." Clara flushed at the quiet invitation beneath his words. "The bedroom down the hall is yours," he continued. "I'll sleep in the loft above until we decide something different." His blunt honesty flustered her, though she found it strangely comforting. Finn didn't dance around topics or hide his intentions behind polite pretense. She had spent years with a man who cloaked cruelty in charm. Finn was the opposite, rough, plain-spoken, but steady. When he showed her the kitchen corner, Clara felt her hands itch with familiarity. Henry had never allowed her true control of their kitchen, claiming she would ruin things or eat too much. Here, Finn gestured to everything as if it belonged to her already. Pots hung neatly, jars filled with dried beans, flour, barley. "You can arrange things the way you like," he said. "I keep a decent stock of staples, but I'm not much of a cook. Mostly live on stews and whatever I smoke for the winter." Clara, overwhelmed, managed a small smile. "I can work with this." She expected him to correct her, to say she didn't need to, or that her cooking wasn't necessary. Instead, Finn simply nodded, as if entrusting a home's heart to her was the most natural thing in the world. Their days settled into a quiet rhythm. Each morning, Finn rose early to tend the animals, chop wood, check the traps, or repair whatever needed mending. Clara would hear his heavy footsteps creak across the loft ladder before dawn, then the steady thud of his boots outside as he worked. For the first week, she insisted on making breakfast before he returned: eggs, biscuits, sometimes oatmeal mixed with dried berries. The first morning she baked bread, Finn came in with frost on his beard, sniffed the air, and stopped dead in the doorway. "What's that?" he asked. "Just bread," Clara said, suddenly self-conscious. He crossed the room in 3 strides and inhaled deeply. "Smells like something out of a memory." "Sit," she encouraged. He obeyed, and when he took his first bite, he closed his eyes. "Better than anything I've eaten in years." Clara's eyes stung. No one had ever responded that way to her cooking. Henry had complained, insulted, mocked. Finn simply appreciated it without qualification. His gratitude didn't end there. He began leaving the choicest cuts of meat inside for her to prepare, splitting extra logs so she wouldn't strain herself, fixing a loose hinge before she noticed it squeaking. When he returned from trapping with a sprained wrist one evening, Clara insisted on wrapping it. "You don't have to fuss," he grumbled. "It's not fussing," she replied, tying the bandage firmly. "It's caring." Finn stared at her hand on his forearm for a long moment. "I'm not used to that." "Neither am I," she whispered. He looked up sharply, and for a rare moment Clara felt truly seen. Evenings were the hardest and the most precious. After supper, they sat by the fire, the crackle of pine logs filling the quiet between them. Finn often worked with his hands, carving, repairing traps, smoothing leather. Clara would sew, mend, or read. But as the days passed, talking became more natural. One night she asked, "Why did you never marry before?" Finn's knife paused mid-carve. "Didn't trust easily, didn't have reason to. Folks in town wanted nothing to do with me. Too big, too quiet, too strange, too much of everything." Clara blinked. "You? Too much?" He shrugged. "Men like me make people uneasy." She considered him, not just his sheer size, but the intensity in his eyes, the stillness in his movements. "You're not frightening, Finn." He huffed a laugh. "Plenty disagree." "Then they haven't looked closely." His gaze held hers for a moment longer than necessary. Clara found herself opening up too, piece by piece. She told him about Henry's drinking, the nights he spent at the saloon, the way he'd belittled her every chance he got. She expected Finn to pity her or grow angry. Instead, he listened quietly, jaw tightening only once. When she confessed Henry had forced her to sleep on the floor one winter because the bed creaked under her weight. "That man died too easy," Finn muttered. Clara startled. "Finn!" He looked unapologetic. "A man who treats his wife like a mule doesn't deserve the word husband." Clara looked down, swallowing hard. "Thank you." Their connection deepened, not through grand gestures, but through small, constant ones. The time Finn returned early with extra firewood because he'd noticed the temperature dropping. The afternoon, Clara mended his torn shirt, only to find him quietly wearing it the next day despite 3 others hanging clean. The evening Finn told her, "Sit by the fire, your feet must ache," before kneeling at her boots and gently removing them, his huge hand surprisingly tender. Clara nearly cried from the shock of such care. One evening, as the wind howled outside, Finn came down from the loft with a bundle of furs. "These are for your bed," he said. "Winters get brutal here. I want you warm." She touched the soft pelts. "They're beautiful. They're yours now." He hesitated, then added, "If you get cold during the night, just call for me. I'll come light the fire again." Her heart fluttered helplessly. Days passed. One morning, as they prepared breakfast together, Finn chopping onions while Clara stirred a pan, she realized something profound. She felt comfortable, not tolerated, not endured, wanted. Her laugh came easier. Her steps grew lighter. She began humming as she baked, something she hadn't done since girlhood. Finn noticed. One dusk, as she was setting bread to rise, he leaned against the doorway, arms folded across his broad chest. "You're different lately," he said. Clara froze. "Different?" "Brighter, less guarded, like you're breathing easier." Her cheeks warmed. "This place is peaceful." "It's not the place," Finn said quietly. "It's you. You're finally allowed to be yourself." Clara met his gaze, heart racing. "I didn't know I could feel like this again." Finn took a slow step toward her. "You deserve to feel even better than this." Before their next words could find air, a sharp knock sounded at the cabin door, a harsh reminder that peace in the mountains was never permanent. The knock wasn't polite. It struck the door hard enough to rattle the hinges, echoing through the cabin like a warning shot. Clara gasped, her hands still dusted with flour. Finn's expression darkened instantly. His shoulders squared, his posture shifting into something primal and alert. "Stay here," he murmured. Clara's heart thudded painfully as he crossed the room in 3 long steps. He didn't fling the door open. He eased it slightly, keeping his body between her and whatever waited outside. A cold voice seeped through the crack. "Bridger, we need to talk." Finn's jaw flexed. "Not interested." The door pushed harder from the outside. Finn shoved back effortlessly. "You'll want to hear this," the voice said. Clara recognized it before she saw the face. Sheriff Cole Avery, Henry's old drinking partner, a man who'd often smirked at Clara in town, calling her Big Brenny, while Henry laughed along. Cold swept her veins. Finn opened the door only enough to step outside, then shut it firmly behind him. Clara pressed a hand to her mouth and crept to the window, peering through a sliver in the curtain. Finn towered over Sheriff Avery, who wore a dusty coat, star glinting, hand resting casually, too casually, on his holster. "What do you want?" Finn asked. Avery spat. "To warn you, you bought something that wasn't meant to leave town." Finn didn't move. "I bought her debt, legally." "Legal isn't the same as smart," Avery replied. "Henry Brennan owed more than what the judge listed. Other men are expecting repayment. Men who won't take kindly to her running into the mountains with you." Finn's voice dropped dangerously low. "She didn't run. I took her." Avery snorted. "Same difference, Bridger. Folks in Silver Falls don't like loose ends, or debts they can't squeeze money out of." Clara's stomach twisted. She felt suddenly lightheaded, the room blurring around the edges. Avery's next words made her knees buckle. More to the point, Henry owed money to the Valentine Mining Company. Finn stiffened. "Impossible. Henry was broke." "Sure," Avery said, smirking, But desperate men borrow from dangerous places, and the Valentines don't forgive debts. Not for the dead, not for their widows. Clara stumbled back from the window, hand to her chest. Valentine mining was notorious. Half bandit, half corporation, and wholly merciless. Finn's voice carried through the wall. If they come here, they won't walk away. Avery shrugged. Just thought you deserved a fair warning. They're coming, Bridger, and they want collateral. He tipped his hat. Nice cabin you've got. Shame if flames got to it first. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. Moments later, Finn came back inside, closing the door firmly and sliding the heavy bar into place. Clara stood in the center of the room, frozen. "Clara," he said softly. "Come sit." She obeyed, sinking into the chair by the hearth. Finn crouched in front of her, his massive hands resting lightly on her knees. "Don't panic," he murmured. "I won't let anyone hurt you." She shook her head, tears starting to spill. "Finn, I didn't know. Henry never told me. He never said he borrowed from them. If I had known—" "Stop." Finn took her hands gently. "This is not your fault." "But they'll come here," she whispered. "They'll burn your home. They'll hurt you. They might—" Her voice broke. "I brought this trouble to your door." Finn's eyes softened, storm gray but steady. "If trouble comes, it comes. I'd rather it be at my door than yours." "But why?" Clara cried. "Why risk your life for me? Why take on my debts, my past, my danger? I'm not worth—" Finn's hands closed around hers, firm, warm, grounding. "Clara Brennan, I decide your worth. Not Henry, not the town, not some mining crooks who think they own the territory." She swallowed hard, chest heaving. Finn took a slow breath, the kind that prepared a man to reveal something that weighed on him. "There's something I never told you," he said quietly. Clara's pulse skittered. "What?" He sat back slightly, though his hands remained clasped around hers. "I wasn't always alone in these mountains," he said. "When I first came out here, I had a partner, a woman. We weren't married, but we were building toward it." His voice thickened. "One night, a group of men came, drunk, angry, looking for trouble. They wanted to take our supplies. We fought them off, but she didn't survive." Clara pressed a hand to her heart. "I buried her behind the cabin," Finn continued. "After that, I kept everyone at arm's length, trusted no one, didn't bring another soul here. I figured I'd live and die alone." He swallowed, eyes lowering. "Then I saw you on that auction block. Saw a woman standing alone against the world, just like I had. Saw strength in your spine when everyone around you tried to break it, and something inside me woke up." Clara felt tears spill over. "I didn't want a servant," Finn said. "I wanted someone I could protect. Someone who'd let me build a life again. Someone with fight and loyalty and heart enough to fill these empty rooms." His eyes lifted to hers, earnest, raw, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen in any man. "And that someone was you." Clara's breath caught, her hands trembled in his. "I'm afraid," she whispered, "not of you, of everything else, of bringing danger to your life." Finn leaned closer, his forehead brushing hers. "Then let me be afraid with you," he murmured. "Fear shared is halved, but love only grows." She inhaled sharply. "Finn!" Before he could answer, a distant howl rose from the valley, long, low, chilling. Not a wolf, a signal. Finn rose to his full height, eyes hardening. "They're closer than I hoped," he said. "We have little time." Clara stood too, her hands fists at her sides. "Tell me what to do," she whispered. Finn looked at her, really looked, and nodded once, slowly. "You stand beside me," he said, "and you don't back down." Clara drew a shaky breath. For years she'd been made small, silent, invisible. Now a mountain man was asking her to stand with him. And she would, even if her legs trembled, even if her heart raced, even if death came with the dawn. The howl from the valley faded, swallowed by the cold September air, but its echo lingered in Clara's bones. Finn moved with calm precision, checking his rifle, securing shutters, reinforcing the door with a thick beam of pine. He wasn't frantic. He wasn't afraid. He was preparing. Clara found herself steadying. If he wasn't panicking, then she wouldn't either. "What do they want?" she asked quietly, as Finn lit a second lantern and placed it near the window. "Nothing they're owed," he said flatly, "but everything they think they deserve." He slipped a hunting knife into his belt. The Valentines take land, livestock, women, labor, whatever they can get from fear. A cold wave rolled over Clara. Would they take me? Finn stopped, turned. His storm-gray eyes locked onto hers with a ferocity that stole her breath. "No one touches you," he growled. "No one." The promise settled into her chest like molten iron. Outside, snow began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, swirling against the windows like restless ghosts. The stillness was so complete, Clara could hear her heartbeat. Then came the crunch of boots. Lots of them. Clara stepped toward Finn instinctively. He positioned himself slightly in front of her, not blocking, but shielding. Men emerged from the tree line, lanterns bobbing like hungry eyes. 6? No. 8. Maybe 10. Guns glinted beneath their coats. At the front stood a tall man in a long black coat, coattails flapping in the wind. His silver belt buckle caught the lantern light. Leon Valentine. Clara had never met him, but she recognized the cold arrogance instantly. This was a man raised to believe fear was currency and cruelty its natural partner. "Bridger!" Valentine called, his voice booming. "You're harboring a woman who belongs to me." Finn opened the window hatch silently, lifting his rifle but keeping the barrel angled toward the ground, a promise he could shoot, not that he would first. "She doesn't belong to you," Finn said, "or to anyone." Valentine chuckled. "Her husband owed us $800. He died. That leaves the widow." He gestured lazily toward the cabin. "Send her out. We'll consider your interference forgiven." Clara stiffened. Finn didn't turn, but she heard the shift in his breath. "She's my wife," Finn said. Something in his tone. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't a claim of convenience. It was a vow. Valentine paused, then laughed. "Your wife? You bought her indenture for $300. That makes her property, not a bride." Finn's voice dropped to a deadly calm Clara had never heard from anyone. "Step 1 foot closer, and you'll learn exactly how wrong you are." A murmur rippled through the Valentine men. Guns were cocked. Snowflakes hissed against heated lantern glass. Clara's heart hammered. Every instinct told her to hide, to shrink, to disappear. But another instinct, new, fragile, burning bright, told her to stand beside the man defending her life. She moved, right to his side. Finn shot her a sharp look. "Clara, I stand with you," she whispered, and she did. Her hand found his arm, not clinging, but anchoring. Finn's jaw clenched, pride flashing in his eyes. Valentine noticed. His smirk deepened. "Look at that. The fat widow's got spirit. Shame she tied herself to a dead man walking." Finn raised his rifle, not shaking, not threatening, simply declaring intent. "I said no one touches her." Valentine shrugged. "Have it your way." He snapped his fingers. The world exploded. Gunfire crackled through the clearing. Wood splintered. Snow burst into the air like shattered glass. Finn pulled Clara down behind the heavy table, shielding her with his body as bullets tore into the cabin walls. "Stay low," he ordered, voice steady, even as chaos raged outside. "If they breach, you run to the back room and bar the door." "I won't leave you," she whispered, trembling. He cupped the back of her head briefly, one fierce, grounding touch. "You will if I tell you to. I need you alive." A crash shook the cabin, someone slamming against the door Finn had reinforced earlier. It held, but not for long. Finn rose to one knee, rifle braced against his shoulder. "Cover your ears!" She obeyed. His shot rang out like thunder. A scream followed. Valentine barked orders. Another shot, another cry. Finn moved with terrifying precision, reloading in seconds, firing only when he had a clean target. But Clara knew a losing battle when she saw one. There were too many, too armed, too determined. A burst of wood shattered from the door, cracking straight down the center. Clara's breath froze. They were coming in. Finn stood fully now, body between her and the splintering door, blood trickling from a graze at his temple. "Finn!" she whispered, terrified. He didn't look back. "You're safe here," he said softly. Even as death clawed at the front door, the words wrapped around her like armor. "You're safe, Clara, as long as I stand." The beam snapped. The door swung inward. Valentine stepped through the smoke and snow, and Clara rose behind Finn, her hand closing on the iron fireplace poker, courage pouring into her veins like fire. She would not lose the only man who had ever seen her. She would not be powerless again. She would stand. The cabin door crashed inward, splintering across the floor in a spray of wood and snow. Clara's heart pounded so hard she feared it might burst. But she didn't step back. Not this time. Finn stood like a fortress in front of her, shoulders squared, rifle raised for one final shot. Beyond him, Valentine strode inside with the confidence of a man who believed he'd already won. "Step aside, Bridger," Valentine said, brushing snow from his coat. "She's coming with me, and if you're lucky, you'll live long enough to regret crossing me." Finn didn't move. "I told you," he growled, voice quiet, lethal. "You will not touch my wife." Valentine smirked. "Then you die first." He lifted his revolver, and Clara stepped out from behind Finn, not far, just enough for Valentine to see her, just enough for Finn to feel her presence at his side, just enough for fate to shift. "Clara," Finn started, voice breaking with fear. "I won't hide," she said, and though she whispered it, the words rang clear through the shattered doorway. Valentine laughed. "How touching! The widow has courage now." Clara didn't speak. She gripped the iron poker with both hands, knuckles white, palms sweating. She had never fought. She had never defended herself. But Finn had fought for her. Finn had bled for her. This time she would stand for him. Valentine lifted his revolver again. Finn lunged. The shot fired wild, slamming into the doorframe. Finn struck Valentine like a charging bull, knocking the gun from his hand. They crashed into the table, sending lanterns flying, fire scattering sparks across the floor. Clara darted forward, adrenaline burning through her. One of the henchmen rushed in behind Valentine, raising a rifle, and Clara swung the fire poker. It connected with a sickening crack. The man dropped instantly, rifle slipping from his grasp and skidding across the plank floor. Finn finished what Clara had begun, driving Valentine to the ground. A final blow, one Clara couldn't bear to watch, and the mining lord lay unconscious, or worse, beneath him. Outside, the remaining men panicked. With their leader down and gunshots echoing through the valley, they dragged their injured and fled into the snow-drenched forest, disappearing as quickly as they'd come. Silence fell, heavy, disbelieving. Finn turned toward Clara slowly, breath ragged, blood streaking his brow. "You saved my life," he said, stunned. "You saved mine first," she whispered. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, careful, reverent, as though she were the one thing in the world he could not afford to crush. "You brave, incredible woman," he murmured, voice shaking into her hair. "You stood with me." "I'll always stand with you," Clara said, "if you still want me." He pulled back just enough to cradle her face in both hands. "Clara," he whispered, as if speaking a vow, "you are my wife, my heart, my future. Nothing in this world could make me want you less." Her tears spilled freely now, but not from fear, from belonging, from being chosen, from finally being loved without condition. Finn rested his forehead against hers. The fire crackled beside them, warm and alive. Snow fell gently through the broken doorway, glittering in the lantern light. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "It's your home now, if you'll have it." Clara leaned into him, breath trembling with hope. "I want it. I want us." Outside, the storm eased. The mountains held their breath. The future loomed vast and uncertain, but for the first time, Clara faced it not as a burden or a widow or a woman weighed down by shame. She faced it as a partner, a wife, a woman finally stepping into a life she deserved. And though danger still lingered beyond the pines, a single question shimmered in the air between them. Would their love be strong enough to withstand whatever came next, out there in the wild, unforgiving world? Some stories begin with humiliation on an auction block and end with 2 people finding the courage to stand back to back against the world. Clara Brennan walked into the mountains believing she was a burden, a widow with nothing to offer. She found a man who saw her strength before she ever recognized it herself, and together they built a home powerful enough to withstand the storm outside and the doubts within. Where in the world are you listening from today? And do you believe that love, unlikely, unexpected, forged in danger, can truly save a life? If you do, stay close. The next story is already on its way.